Okay, so let's have a look at this question. We're going to use Java's built-in LinkedList class to develop a LinkedList GUI. Okay, so write a class called Student Email that has data members' name and number, name and ID, whatever you want to call them. The class should have a constructor, an appropriate accessor and mutator methods, and a toString method. So it's all pretty standard stuff so far. The toString method should return the student name, the student number, and an email address. And the email address is constructed from the student number. So, for example, s123@my.email or whatever. Okay, so we need a GUI that's going to have 2 text fields and 2 labels, one for name, one for ID, a text area to display the data, and 4 buttons. Okay, there's going to be an add button. When the user clicks that, the data in the text fields will be used to create a student email object, and then add that to the linked list, and then display those latest student details in the text area. A delete button, which will take the name or the ID. You can do it off either field, whichever one is unique. So we'll do it off the name here. So if they type a name into the text field and click the delete button, your program will search through the linked list and see if a student with that name exists, and if they do, delete them. Otherwise, if the student wasn't found, it'll pop up a dialog box saying error, could not find student, or something like that. A display all button, which displays all students in the linked list, and an exit button. So there's a few things you need to decide here, and the first one is, are you going to allow duplicates? Is ID unique, and is student name unique, or will we not just worry about it for now? I think for now we'll just not worry about it. We'll let unique duplicate student IDs and student names go into the list. We might look at that later if we get time. Okay, so we'll just keep it basic for now, as simple as possible. Okay, so I've done a quick storyboard of how I think this GUI should look. So I've got ID and name text fields and labels. There's a label text field, label text field. I've got the 4 buttons, add, delete, display all, and exit. And I've got a big text area here, which is going to contain the data. Okay, so our linked list is behind the scenes, and that's going to feed data into the text area here. In terms of layout, I've got the text area going into a border layout center. I've got a flow panel down the bottom for the labels and text fields. I've got another flow panel down the bottom here, or flow layout panel for the buttons. And both those flow layout panels are going to get added to a grid panel, which has got a grid layout with 2 rows and 1 column. And that grid panel is going to get added to the border layout south. So that's planned everything out. That's made it nice and easy. Now all I need to do now is write the code. Okay, so let's start with the student email class to start off with. Private string name, private, and student ID might contain digits, so I'll make it a string as well. ID, okay, I'm happy with calling it ID. We'll have a constructor, so it's the same name as the class. Public. We'll have a default constructor which just initializes everything. Name equals spaces, ID equals spaces. Now we'll have a parameterized constructor, which is going to be very similar to this one, but take in 2 parameters. Going to take in a name and an ID. To keep it simple, we're not going to do any validation at this stage, but something that you would certainly need to do if this is a live application. So we're going to set the class data name, this.name, to the name that was passed in. And same for ID, the class data ID, which is this.id, equals the ID passed in. Then we need our accessor methods, so they're going to return a string, so both of them. Public string get name, and that's just going to return the name. And the same thing for ID. Get ID, it's just going to return ID. Nice and simple. You would have done this many times already. And then we've got our set name methods, so public void set name. That's going to take in a name. And again, no validation. We're just going to set the class data item name to the one that was passed in, and we can scavenge our code above really easily to make this happen. And the same for set ID, so we've got our mutator methods in place. It's all very standard so far. You would have written this code or code very much like it many times already. And then a toString method, and that's an accessor method as well. It's just string, toString, and don't forget your good old friend override to make sure you're overriding the right method from the object class. Return name, or actually I might put ID first. ID plus. We'll just use tab separated for now. And we want to construct the email. So the email is going to be the student ID plus a string. And what we'll do, we'll make that string a constant because that's not likely to change during the run of a program. So we'll make it a public constant, why not? Public static final string, and I'll call it email stub, or email stubs. Stub is my dot email, and that could be hotmail.com or whatever it is for you that you can change that to if you want. So it's plus ID plus email stub. So we're returning the ID with a tab, the name with a tab, and the ID plus email stub. Okay, so 3 fields getting returned there. We're calculating the email on the fly based on the ID and the email stub, which is at my.email. Okay, and of course we put a comment header at the top of all our classes. That's just taken as read. Author, name, date, description, all that sort of thing at the top of every class. Okay, so that's our student email class wrapped up. Okay, so now we're ready to do our GUI class. So let's just look at our storyboard again, and we need a text area, 2 labels and 2 text fields. So let's do that for now. J label, ID label equals new J label, ID, or ID if you want uppercase, whatever works best for you. If I put a space after it, that's going to put a little bit of space between it and the text field that I create when I add them to the user interface, so it's a little trick there you can use. ID text field, text, alright, well, fingers here, text field, and of course I like lining everything up neatly because you've got to take pride in your work, and that's a J text field, text field, I'll get there eventually, J text field equals new J text field. And how many digits do you want them to be able to type in or see at any one stage in their text field? Maybe 10, maybe 5. Okay, you can type as many as you like, but that's how many are visible at any one time, so maybe 10's ample. And then we've got the same for name, and we need a name label and a name text field, so we're just copying and pasting what we've already done to save ourselves a little bit of work, and that's going to be name. Okay, and again we need a comment header at the top of all our programs, all the files. That's just taken as read. So we need a constructor, public, followed by the name of the class, followed by round brackets. Now we're going to add all these to a flow panel. If you remember from our storyboard here, we're going to add them all to a flow panel, all of these components, and then add them to the user interface. So let's do that. So we'll declare a flow panel, jpanel, flow1 panel equals new jpanel, new flow layout, and I'm going to say flow layout center, so everything's nice and centered in the screen, centered horizontally. Okay, so that's flow panel 1. We might also create flow panel 2 while we're here because we're going to need it for our buttons down below. Okay, so flow panel 1 dot add. So we're just going to add the components in the order we want them. So it's ID label. Copy that a couple of times, 3 times. ID text field, followed by name label followed by name text field. So you can see it's very fast. Once you've created a few GUIs, you get very fast at them, and we need to add that to our user interface. We'll just do an add for now. That's good enough. So we're ready to compile. Control 1. Whoops. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is bring in our Swing GUI components. So we need some imports, or if you want to do an asterisk import, you can just do one import java x.swing.star. That'll do it. Control 1. Still a few errors there. Flow layout panel there in the AWT class, java.awt.star. Still one error, and cannot find symbol add. Oh, okay, so we didn't extend JFrame up here. So the add method didn't know what it was adding to, so extends JFrame. Okay, so now we're telling telling Java that our class is a GUI class that extends JFrame. So it's going to have a standard Windows sort of frame around it with a title area and let's say the minimize, maximize, close icons in the top corner. Okay, so now we should be fine. Control 1, Control 2. Oh, we need a main. Of course, we need a main. So we need a main method. And you can do that. You can put that in your GUI class or create a separate tester class or whatever you want to call it, a runner class. Public static void main string array args. And we're going to create an instance of our GUI class. App.set visible to true because everything's invisible by default. App.set size, and we'll make it, I'll just make up a size here, something that might work, 500 wide by 500 high. Sounds like a fair starting point. We can always change it later. Set location so we're not on the top left corner of the screen. And you'll know when I code, I keep everything nicely aligned. I like having nice, neat code. 200 across and 100 down should do it. And it's a lowercase o location. And we need to set the default close operation for when the user clicks the X icon in the top corner. Set default close operation, and it's jframe.exit underscore on underscore close. That's using a constant in the jframe class to tell it to exit on close when we click the X icon. And that should be it. Should be good to go. Okay, and there's our GUI. Okay, so with the ID and the name coming out already. Okay, so far so good. Let's go on to the next stage. Let's do our buttons next. So we've got, just refresh ourselves. We'll go to our storyboard, add, delete, display all, and exit. So I'll create 4 buttons and add those to the user interface. In their own panel, I'll call it Flow To panel. I've already created that. Okay, so buttons, J button, add button, and I'll keep everything aligned with what's above, equals new J button, add, close quotes Mike, delete button, that's going to be delete, display all button, and I've run out of room, so I'm going to put everything across. It's well worth keeping your code neat. It'll save you a lot of errors later. And if someone comes and works on your project later, which won't happen at university of course, but later on when you're in industry, they're more likely to keep your code neat as well if you start with it neat. So they'll keep it neat if you provide neat code. It'll save everyone a lot of time and trouble and whatever. Exit button equals new button, exit. So that's all looking nice and neat. We've already got our flow panel 2 where we're going to add those. So let's add them in. And I want to do 4 of those, 1 for each button. First one's add, Control C, Control V, copy and paste, copy, paste, Copy. You can see you get very quick at this once you've done a few user interfaces. It won't take you long if you're a little bit slow at the moment. Just lots of practice. That's all you need. And then we need to add our flow panel 2 to the user interface. And you'll know by prior discussions that you can't add 2 components, even if they're panels, to the one region, because the second one overwrites the first one. Okay, so this is where we need our grid layout. Let's go back to our storyboard, and we've got a grid panel. We need to add our flow panel 1, 2, and our flow panel 2, 2, and then we'll add that to the border layout south. So let's do that. So we need a grid panel, J panel, grid panel, and you can see I'm just following exactly the same names that I put in my storyboard. It's very hard to go wrong if you keep yourself organized and make a plan and stick to it. New grid layout, not brig, grid layout, and the number of rows we want 2, number of columns we want 1, and that's all we need. And then grid panel, we're going to add our flow panel 1 to that first of all, and then add our flow panel 2 to that, and then we're going to add that to our border layout south. Okay. Control 2, and there they are down in the south region. How about that? We'll get our labels and text fields and our 4 buttons all ready to go. So you can see if you keep organized and you make a plan like a storyboard and stick to it, you can do these things very quickly. Okay, so now we need our text area. So I'll put that at the top. I like sort of keeping these things in roughly the order they appear on the user interface. J text area, student text area equals new, and I've got that over here. Control C, copy and paste. Okay, I'm going to add the text area to a center region in our border layout. There's our storyboard. We're adding the text area to a border layout center. So we're just following our plan. Couldn't be easier. Okay, so down here, add text area to border layout center. And I'm just neatening everything up. Control S to save it. Compile, run, and there it is. So there's a big text area there. You just can't see it because there's no border around it. So, but it's there. I can type into it. Okay, you probably don't want the user to type into that directly, so we'll make that so it's none of these buttons are wired up yet, so we're not doing anything when we click them. So let's make this so it's read only or display only. And you do that with I tend to do that near the top of the constructor that creates the GUI. Should text area dot set editable to false. So that's, in other words, it's read only or display only. Don't forget your semicolons. Control 1, Control 2. Now when we click on it and we type, nothing happens. So it's read only now or display only. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so one thing I like doing when I'm laying out my code is I like putting GUI components. I like putting comments in to separate all the different types of declarations I'm going to do. So constants, I put at the top. Then I can put my GUI components, and then down here, just before the constructor, I put class instance data. Okay, and in this case, we've only got one instance data item we need to keep track of at the moment, and that's our linked list. So we'll declare a private linked list called student linked equals new linked list. And we need an import for linked list, and I've just grabbed that straight out of the Java help there. So just look in the Java docs for linked list, and there's the import for it. And if you scroll down a bit, you can see all the methods you can use. So there's the add method, which we'll be using. If you want to add to a particular location in the index, you can, in the linked list, you can add with an index. Clear is used for clearing them all. remove for removing them, or remove at a certain location, and so on. So all the methods are in there that you need. So definitely worth looking at that Java docs for linked list. Okay, for linked list you need an import, and I've just copied that straight out of that Java docs. Okay, so we've got the 3 imports at the moment with asterisks for 2 of them. So we need to tell Java what type of linked list we're creating. Okay, and we're creating one that can store students, or student emails, student email class objects. Okay, so we need to make sure we put that in, and then when we go equals new linked list, we need to make sure we put the same thing in, less than student email, greater than. So we're telling Java that this linked list can contain student email objects, which is our student email class, objects based on that class. Okay, so we're ready to do an add method now. It's getting to the pointy end. So we'll add an action listener to our add method. Add button dot add action listener, action listener, and we'll use lambdas because they're so cool. Event add student. Okay, so when we click the add button, Java's going to run a method called add student. So we need to create a method called add student. We'll make it a private method so that only other methods inside our class can access it. Private void add student. And down here, first thing we want to do is create the student based on the user's inputs. So we're talking about the inputs in the ID text field, so we'll need that shortly. And the name text field, so we'll paste those down because we're going to need those very shortly. And we'll need our linked list object, which is our student linked list. Okay, and the way we add a student dot add, and we're going to create the student new. It's a student email, and we're going to use the ID text field dot get text, followed by the name text field. I'll put on a new line so we're not going off the screen too much. Dot get text. Get text. And we can delete that now, we don't need that anymore. So that's all it is. We're going to add the ID, and I might move all this down. So we're creating a new student email class object, and we're passing through the ID into the constructor parameter 1, which, we're going to name an ID in this case. So what I might do is just swap those around. So name and ID. Could have swapped them around here or in the class, wouldn't matter. Okay, but you've got to make sure you pass through the name and ID, and if you swap those around, you've got to pass through the ID and the name. So just got to keep things in step. Okay, so that's adding it to the user interface. Now what we want to do is display that data that's in the linked list to the text area. Okay, so we need to start at the start of the linked list, and then move through all items in the linked list and add them to the text area. So there's a little bit of code we need to write, but it's not much. It's just basically a loop, and we're going to traverse the linked list and get all the data out of it and add them into the text area. Okay, so I've got a couple of little typos here. I need to put a comma there, not a full stop, and I'm missing a closing bracket. So that should fix that. Let's compile. Cool. Okay, so now what we need to do, we've added our new student to our linked list. Now what we need to do is iterate through that linked list and update our text area. So there's our text area up here, student text area. First thing I want to do is erase it. So .set text to double quote. And then what we want to do is loop through our linked list. So there's many ways you can do it. I'm just going to show you the easiest way. So for every student ID or student object in the linked list, so you can use a for each loop to do this. Okay, so for each student object in the linked list, we're going to append them, .append to the linked list. So it's just append stud. Okay, and what that does, it runs our toString method. So it's going to get the ID plus a tab plus a name plus a tab plus the ID plus email stub. Okay, for each student that's in our linked list. And probably what I want to do as well, so that they're on new lines, is append a /n Okay, so you can either do that here or in your toString method. You can put a /n there at the end if you want, whatever you think works best. Control 1, Control 2. So there's our class running. Let's type in an ID. Mike, add. There's Mike being added. I can just keep clicking Mike. So this is where you need to decide, are you going to allow duplicates? For me, I'm happy to allow duplicates at this stage, but if this is a real student class, you probably wouldn't allow duplicates because you want people to have unique names or, at the very least, unique identifiers. Okay, so if you were going to restrict things to make them unique, the first thing you'd have to do is traverse your linked list before you did this add command. So up here you would have to traverse your linked list and just make sure, so you need another for loop. In fact, we might as well do it. Since we're half done it already, we might as well do it. Boolean is ID unique equals false. Or actually we'll say it's true, it is unique, and we'll try and prove that wrong. So if stud dot get ID dot compare to equals 0. So I've got to fill in a little bit of code here. So we're going to compare the student ID in the current for the current student in our linked list. So we're going to look through all items in the linked list, all students in the linked list, get their student ID, get ID, which is just calling this get ID method over here. Get ID is just calling that to get their student ID, and we're going to compare it to the one that's in the ID. So we're going to say the ID, the student ID has to be unique, which is fair enough. I'll take off that semicolon at the end, don't want that. So if the match is found, compare to return 0, and I'll say is unique equals false. In other words, the ID was found in a linked list, so it's not unique. And then down here, we could say if ID unique is equal to false, then we could display an error message, J option pane dot show message dialog null, and then error student ID is not unique, or student ID is already in the linked list in the database. We won't put linked lists on the screen, that'll scare a user, but database is generally more acceptable. Okay, so else, and that's why we want to do this code down here. Let's just review this again. So we've got is ID unique there, a Boolean set to true, and we'll try and prove that wrong. So we're going to loop through all students in our linked list, check their IDs, see if they match, if any match the ID currently in the text field, and if they match, we're going to say ID unique is false. If ID unique is false, we're going to display a message to the user saying error student ID is already in the database. Otherwise, we can add them to the linked list and update the text area. Okay, so that's how our code's going for the add method. So let's control 1, control 2. So I'll add S123 Mike, and I'll click the add button. Okay, so Mike's added. We'll click add again, and we'll get the error saying ID is already in the database. So our unique check is already working, so that's good. We might as well leave it in. Okay, so and we're not checking if Mike's unique, if the name's unique. We're just checking if the ID is unique. So that's fair enough. Now, if the student ID could contain letters and numbers and lowercase and uppercase, maybe what we want to do here is a special version of the compare to called compare to ignore case. Ignore case. So that at the end of lowercase letters or uppercase letters, it doesn't matter. It still finds them and matches them. Okay. For example, control 1, control 2, uppercase S123, Mike, add, and if I try and add Mike again, it won't let me because the ID is already there. If I make this a lowercase letter, lowercase s, and try and add again, it'll still say it's in the database. So that's what we want. Okay, so far so good. We're really rocking along now. We want to wire up our other buttons. So display all just displays all the data in the linked list. So display all dot add action listener event display all. So we're going to call the display all method if the user clicks that button, and I'll line everything up like I like to do. Okay, so display all just displays all the data in a linked list. It's a private method. We don't want it being called directly outside of our class, although this one's not a dangerous one. The add method's more dangerous because we don't want junk being added to our linked list. Okay, so display all basically does this code here. That's what display all does. Okay, so rather than have that code here and down here, why don't we just move that down here and call display all up here? So we'll do that. Control X or cut, paste, fix up the tabbing, and then we'll call display all up here by just saying display all. Okay, so now we've wired up the display all button. We need to wire up the exit button. Exit button. Exit. Exit. I'll just make a exit application or something. Just something a bit more, just an exit, because exit's a reserved word. So exit application. And down here, we'll private void exit application. And we'll just go system dot exit and 0, and 0 means everything's okay. So it's just a little return value we can return when we exit. Okay, now if we were saving this linked list to file or to database or something, this is where we do it. We'd save it to file here. If we wanted to prompt the user, are you sure you want to exit? This is where we do the prompting. We prop up a confirmation dialog and only exit if they click yes. So there's a lot of things we could do in this little exit application method, but all we want to do for now is just exit. Okay, so there's a bunch more things we could do: write to file, prompt to confirm exiting, and all sorts of things like that. But we won't worry about that at this stage. So we've got display all, we've got exit. The only other thing left to do is the delete button. Okay, so let's control 1 and control 2 and run it. And display all. There's no data in the array list or linked list. S123 Mike add. Sorry, add. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll add Frankie. Add 4, 4, 4, 4. We'll add Frankie again. And there's Frankie getting added again. So name, we're not checking if name's unique, we're just checking if student ID is unique. So that's all okay, that's working great. Display all, we're already calling display all, so that's fine. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is just wire up our delete button. That's not doing anything at the moment. Okay, so let's do that. And the question says, do the deleting by, if you want to delete a student email entry, you can enter the student name, but we've decided that our ID is unique field, so we'll go off ID. Okay, so we'll search for a student and find their ID in the linked list, and if they're there, we'll delete them. Otherwise, if they're not there, we'll pop up an error message saying student wasn't found. Okay, so we'll do that now. Back to our source code. And delete button. So we'll add a new action listener for a delete button. Delete. Delete student. Okay, so when the delete button is clicked, the delete student method will run. So let's go down here and do that. I might put that after add so that we're in the same neighborhood. Okay, so probably what we're going to do is work out is the ID in the linked list, and that's a great bit of code to do that, so we might even make that its own method. Okay, so I might make that a method up here because it's something we need to do for our delete method as well. Private boolean is ID in linked list. Okay, student ID in linked list. Make it a little bit more meaningful, and it's basically that code there, and we're going to return that boolean that we've got there. Okay, and that's basically it. So now instead of having that code down here as well, we can just invoke this method. Is student ID in linked list, and actually what we might do is pass through the student ID as well, so we can get it from multiple places if we need to. We might need to get it later when we're merging files or something like that, so we'll just make it an ID string. ID string, so it's no longer going to be ID text field, it's just going to be the string that we're going to compare. And that's nice and neat and self-contained then, so we can pass through any ID we like. We don't have to get the one that's just in the text field. Okay, so that's nice and useful. And now instead of having all this code up here, we can just go if is student ID in linked list and get the data out of the text field equals false, then we'll display an error message. So we can chop all this code up here. It's gone. We're shortening our code. We're spotting duplicate code or potentially duplicate code. It's useful to make a method, and we're just shortening things down so our methods are shorter and more compact. Okay, so that's the add student. Clean up a little bit, and now we'll come down here and we'll do the same sort of thing for our remove a student. So if the student ID is in the linked list, okay, so if our student ID is in a linked list, equals true. Okay, so actually I'll leave it as false. So if they're not in a linked list, we can't remove them. So student ID is not in a database, is not in the database. Okay, so if the student ID in the ID text field is not in the linked list, we can't remove them. Okay. Probably what we need to do as well is, so Boolean's not really helpful. Okay, so we can do it that way, righto. There's many ways we can do it. And we'll probably use a, so I'm just thinking about the methods in the linked list class, and there's a remove method. Remove, there it is there, remove. That removes the head of the first element of the list, or else you can remove a certain element. So it takes in the index value, and indexes start at 0, so 0 is the first one, 1's the second, and so on. So we probably want a counter control loop for traversing a linked list here, so that we can find the ID and then remove it. Okay, and we'll call this remove method. There's also other methods you can use as well, which can save you a bit of work. For example, there's a contains, so you can say if a linked list contains a certain object, for example a certain student, so you might be able to use that as well. That can help you. Okay, but we'll just stick with the remove now. So we'll use a counter controlled loop and we'll do a remove. Okay, so we'll just keep it simple and just stick with the basic methods. So for int s equals 0, s is less than linked list, and we need the size of the linked list, and there's a size method for that. There's size down there. Linked list.size colon s plus plus. If student ID dot get ID compared to ignore case, so we need to get the need to get a student email object out of the list. Actually, we'll just keep it simple. I'm overthinking things to try and make it simple as possible. But so we'll just use a linked list dot get s dot get id and string id equals. So we're just getting a current ID out of the student list. So student list dot get s gets the current student that we're looking at, so 0, 1, 2, 3 and so forth. And to get their ID we just go dot get ID. So current ID contains the current student ID, and with the current student ID compared to ignore case is equal to the one we're searching for. So if comparison returns 0, then that's the one we want to remove. So we go student linked list dot remove, and we pass an integer index, remember, which is just s. And that should be it. Chop all that, and then display all to display the latest array list into the text area. Okay, so just to recap on that, if the student in linked list returns false, we can say error, student is not in the linked list. We can't find that student ID. Okay, otherwise we're going to traverse the whole linked list there. And the reason why I'm using a counter control loop here is that so that we can use this remove method, which takes an integer index. Okay, so that's why I changed over to counter control loops. There's other ways to do it as well. I'm just trying to keep it the simplest way, and also show you two ways. So we've got a for each loop up above, and here we've got a counter control loop. Both can be used to traverse a linked list. Okay, so the current student ID in the linked list is student linked list dot get s to get the current one, 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on, dot get ID. And then we're comparing that ID case insensitively with the ID in a text field. And if a match is found, so compare to ignore case returns 0, then we can remove them. That's all it comes down to. So at the end of that loop there, we then do display all to refresh our text area. Okay, so before we go on, let's just remove a bit of confusion here. So is student ID in linked list? Instead of saying is unique, let's say is in list. Or even better, in list. Okay, and we'll say they're not at the start, and okay, so if the comparison returns 0, they're in the list. So we're going to make it so it's a positive thing, not if they're not in the list, but if they are in the list. Okay, just makes the code a little bit easy to understand, and you want to keep the intent of the method the same as the body too. So okay, so now if student ID in linked list is going to return true if they're in a linked list, otherwise it's going to return false. So we just need to change a few of our things down here. If student ID is in a linked list is true, then we're going to, and this is the add method, so then we're going to say students in the database. And when it comes to the delete, if the student ID is in a linked list is equal to false, then we can't remove them because they're not there anymore. Okay, so let's just clean up that little bit of code. So let's control 1, control 2, whoops, and it's in list. Control 1, control 2. Let's add some students. S1, 2, 3, Mike. S4, 4, 4. Frankie. S5, 4, 3, and that's Hank. Okay, and then we want to remove Mike from the list. S1, 2, 3. So I've made it lowercase here. And we don't have to worry about the name when we're doing a remove because we just look at the ID text field. Okay, so delete, and you'll see Mike's gone. Okay, so I did a lowercase s when I'd added them with an uppercase S before, I think. So we'll just confirm that. Add, so Mike's back on the list, and we'll do a lowercase remove, delete, and he's gone. So that's working great. And display all, of course. We're calling display all at the end of each add and delete anyway, so there's really no need for the display all button. Our list is always up to date. If you wanted to make it so add and delete didn't call display all, you could just take out that line of code. So it's this line here I'm talking about. take that out of the add method, and also take it out of the delete method, and then it wouldn't automatically refresh your text area. So you could do that if you wanted to. Some other improvements we could make is after you've done an add, you could maybe reset or erase the data input fields so that the user can't click the add button twice. So we might do that. So set text to blank, so we're erasing our inputs. And ID text field. Okay, and we might do the same thing in the delete method, so that after we've done a delete, we can clean up the input fields. So then we're not having an ID for one student and a name for another in the text fields, which might be confusing. Control 1, Control 2. Okay, so now when I do an S123 Mike, it should add it to the linked list, update the text area, and then delete these or erase these text areas. And that's what it's done. So that's perfect. And S123, and I type in anything here and go delete, and Mike's deleted and everything's fine. If I click delete and there's no students in the database, we'll get a student ID not found message, which is fair enough. We could change that if you wanted to say no students in the database at all. So for example, up here in the delete student, we could go if student ID linked list size.size. So if size is equal to 0, we could display a no students in list message. Else, if the ID is not there or is there, and so on. So list database is empty. Okay, so if the user tries and deletes a student and there's nothing in the list, the size is 0, we'll get a database is empty message, which is probably a bit more appropriate. So delete, and we'll get a database is empty. So everything's working great. So things we could do to make this even better, we could add in saving to file when the user exits the application, and loading from file automatically when the program is run. And we've done that in other videos, so I won't do that here. So we could also add a title message there, a title label, and all sorts of things. So lots we could do to improve it, but it's all done in other videos, so I won't do it now. And that's it. Hope that was useful. Thanks for watching.